Hey, kids cook real food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where, as always, our mission is to connect you, parents who desperately want to raise those healthy, independent adults, with the experts who have the information you need. We build connection, confidence, and creativity in families. And y'all, today we are going to build confidence in you as a parent and also confidence in your kids that they can rise up as leaders for their generation. Dr. Trevor Blattner is here with me today, and his work helps parents who want to raise, I love this so much, capable, respectful kids with strong moral character. He's my people. Today, we're going to talk about how to protect our kids from despair and self destruction in this culture and build leadership qualities in them while we parent in this busy, unpredictable world. Thank you so much for being here with me, Dr. Trevor.
Katie, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here, and this audience is one of the most important audiences, I think, in the world in our present time. And it's parents that care a lot about raising kids that are going to be good for the next generation.
Yeah, it was so encouraging to me because here's the thing. Dr. Trevor Blattner's book is called Redefining the Top 1%. And he's like an executive coach. He works with business people and entrepreneurs. And his book is for those people, but also I was so geeked that he said also for parents who want to raise the next generation of entrepreneurs and leaders, because like that's what we do too, right? We are such a big proponent here at Kids Cook Real Food of like we have to invest in our kids' habits now so that they don't have to
Mhm.
break the bad habits and learn all the good qualities later, right? Like this is what we're here to
Amen.
do.
Amen to that. I mean, that's 100% right. And I think we have a very special position in the lives of our kids, and an opportunity to sort of be the person that they see doing it the right way.
Oh, and we're gonna have an amazing conversation. I got to do, the official introduction, so you know who
Oh,
in the
well,
world we're
of
talking to
course.
here. Dr. Trevor Blattner is the author of Redefining the Top 1%. He's an executive coach and a leading thinker on shepherd leadership. I know some of you are just gonna be so geeked about that. The shepherd leadership is a modern approach to leadership designed to encourage leadership that guides, supports, and uplifts. It's the opposite of ego leadership. He's got over 20 years of research, coaching, and expertise, and he's used that to develop a model of leadership that really breaks free of these antiquated, regressive notions of what it means to lead, right? This enlightened approach to leadership is based on behavioral science, personal experience building and managing a seven-figure business, and a strong commitment to personal values, because Dr. Trevor's family and Christian faith are the most important priorities in his life. So, most important for you all parents to know is that he's got three girls, Kate, Nora, and Lena. We were just talking before we hit record. He's got 3, 5, and 7. I've got 3, 6, 9, and 12. So like nobody can have birthdays because we can count by twos and threes, right? Like no
That's
more
right.
birthdays. Anyway, so we're going to talk today about this idea of shepherd leadership, about redefining the top 1%, and about how we as parents can use this foundation of like character, morality, truth, and a worldview that actions guide our intentions and send us on a journey. We're going to raise kids in this way. So help us out here. What's your story? Like, how did you discover this passion, and why did you write this book in this time?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I mean, without, to try to avoid being overly dramatic, I do feel that it's been a bit of a calling on my life in some ways. I've always been a person, even when I was a kid, that's very inquisitive. I've always wanted to know, why things are the way they are, and how can we best affect, our lives in a way that's positive and positive for those around us. And so my career as an endodontist has kind of taken me down the scientific path, and so I went to residency and I studied peer-reviewed journals and did all kinds of research when I was in my residency. And so my mind sort of works that way, and digging for knowledge is kind of the natural thing for me. And so that paired with building my own business, which I didn't necessarily plan on this, but over time, the most enjoyable part of being in business for me has been the leadership aspect.
Hmm.
it's been growing a team of people that all have a common goal in mind, and being able to care for those people and do whatever I can to make those people have the most success in their own lives, and feel good about it. And so I think that process just got me very interested in wanting to, to go further. So um, I started the podcast that I do about 3 years ago, and sought out, many of the best leaders in the world in their particular industries. And that sort of lit a fire underneath me to continue to pursue, my passion for leadership and get better. And then I read, I guess probably the spark for this particular book, I read an article in the Washington Post a couple of years ago by a guy named Rich Lowry. It was written in 2019. And the article, in a nutshell, was discussing how there's this weird phenomenon in America where young people, so between the ages of 25 and 60, reasonably young, are exponentially.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It is. To me, it is. I'm 37, and I feel extremely young still, and my parents are in their 60s, and they seem very young to me. So reasonably young people are increasing dramatically in suicide rates and mortality rates in general.
Oh, dude, I
More
celebrated
so.
too early.
Oh, right.
I was happy to be in the young group. No, that's not good.
No, that part is not good. That part is not good. And also, the suicide rates are at an 80-year high in the group that is characterized as young population, and a 20-year high in the older adult population. So, it sort of struck me that something bizarre is going on, particularly in the United States, but globally. And I wanted to know, what is it, and really more than that, what can we do about it? And specifically focused on that younger generation, that up and coming generation. What can we as people that have influence in some way do to help prepare them and help make their lives more fulfilling, and show them how to live lives that are in line with the types of values and convictions that are going to be serving them well into the future.
So you started your career, your vocation as a doctor, and kind of discovered that your bedside manner was best used to raise a team, to care for and cultivate a team, which is so cool. And then you're taking your curiosity as a doctor. So you're seeing like diagnosis, suicide, prescription, leadership.
I am, yeah. And that may not be an intuitive connection, but I think leadership has many different definitions. Certainly we think of leadership as our influence over others, and helping them to pursue a goal that is in line with our pursuits. But leadership is definitely personal as well. And so, every decision, I believe that as human beings, we're given free will. And I think, that is a very powerful tool and can be used either positively or negatively. And so every decision that we make is either a decision to lead or to follow. And if we can make more decisions that are oriented toward leadership, particularly leading in a way that we see as bringing light into the world, so to speak, I think that is really what we're called to do. And so I think in many ways, if we can think of leadership in that capacity, it gives us a lot more to live for, and some of the dark tendencies and the addictions and those things that sneak in when we take our hands off the wheel of our own lives, they go away and they fall by the wayside.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. When you first mentioned leadership, you mentioned having someone to care for, right? And there's that research in assisted living homes that just putting a plant in the room of an elderly person tends to decrease their medications and decrease their depression, increase their will to live, with a plant to care for. So you're definitely onto something. And then obviously, like, you are often serving leaders and entrepreneurs, but I really was smitten by the fact that you include parents there, because we both believe, right? Starting young with the right habits makes all the difference. at Kids Cook Real Food, we're focusing on sort of the physical health, a little bit of the mental health and the confidence.
Sure.
But your approach is building these character traits.
Mm.
And I love how that complements what we do in the kitchen. So, I mean, let's jump right in. What do parents need to understand about the perils of our current culture and what their kids need to rise to the top?
Well, I think one of the things I've found in our particular day and age is that the confidence that we as a society and our kids fall into that category, obviously, is we have less confidence in our government, less confidence in the media, and less confidence in each other than we've ever had before in the history of this country. And so I say that only because we have an opportunity as parents to sort of be that person that has earned trust and that kids can count on to look at as a role model. And the fact is, biologically speaking, kids don't do what we say; they model what we do. And this is a survival mechanism. This is in order to survive as a species, we model the behaviors of those leaders that we want to emulate, that we think are successful, and kids certainly do that, probably infinitely more so than we realize. And so, if we're able to have that type of influence over our kids, and if we're able to tailor the type of influence that we have in a way that is showing them day in and day out the most beneficial ways to behave, that's the best thing we can do. And the best way to do that is to model that behavior for them by example. And I think as parents, there's just no more powerful role. And I think in many ways it's stewardship. We've been given the privilege and responsibility to have these children as part of our lives. And if we're going to take that seriously, then being the role model and the example that we want them to model is the least we can do.
That's huge. Now, when you talk about redefining the top 1%, like my brain goes to highly successful, superpowered
Sure.
CEOs, right? Oh, career people. But I feel like you can apply this too to like, I want to raise like an amazing mom to be, or a future dad who wants to prioritize their family, right? While just supporting them within their means. So what does redefining the top 1% mean to you?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So the title "Redefining" was very intentional, and I think many of us as a society, when we hear the word the top 1%, we immediately go to this, us versus them kind of a mentality. We look at the top 1% and we think the elites and this group of people that is sort of out there beyond what we are capable of as individuals. And I want to reframe that because I think we each have internally, we have an internal compass. We have an ability to reach the very top 1% of our own individual potential. And so to me, the top 1% is something worth striving for that we can each reach. But of course, for each of us individually, that's going to look different. But to me, if we can redefine the top 1% to be the very pinnacle of which you and I individually are able to strive for, I think that in and of itself has the ability to change many lives, particularly those that we're in close contact with, like our kids, like those people that we have on our teams at work, like our spouses. Those people that are most directly in contact with us day in and day out. And so that to me is where the top 1% is redefined. And I think moving forward, that's the way it's best thought about.
I love that. So everybody can win. It doesn't have to be competitive that one person's standing on 99 people's heads. It's your own top 1% of your potential with the gifts you've been given. Beautiful. Now, so tell us about the levels people are going to go through, right? Because if you're going to get to the top 1% of your own potential, there's some stairs to climb. So you have some levels about personal performance, which I believe applies to everyone, paycheck or not. as it pertains to this top 1% and this shepherd leadership? So what are the levels?
Yeah, so I call them the 4 levels of personal performance, and I made them easy to remember because I created them to all start with an M. But the first level is sort of the base level, and it's called mayhem, and so that's basically the day in and day out survival mode. That it's easy to fall into. It's sort of the default mode of putting out fires, and trying to live life with as little pain as possible. And
I thought of that insurance
it
commercial. They
is,
kind of
it
co-opted the word
is.
mayhem, like right away. My brain went there, and I don't even want to
That's
think about
exactly it. Yeah, that's the image, and in many ways, it's the default mode, and it's easy for us to fall into that. But the challenge with that, besides the fact that it's miserable, is emotionally and physically, it's very unhealthy. We're in a constant state of stress and fight or flight response, and over time, as we know through the scientific literature, that is detrimental to our physical and mental and emotional health. So that's level one. Level two, I refer to as mediocrity. And that is unfortunately where the majority of people spend most of their lives. And I think it's because it's on the unconscious level. People fall into it, and there's not a lot of pain associated with mediocrity. Um, Other than the pain of not achieving some of the goals in life that we had originally set. But the other challenge with mediocrity is that that's where all the competition is. So most people land in that zone, and there's a lot of other people fighting and scratching in that zone. And so to land there and stay there is inherently more competitive. So level three then is called mission. And mission is, if you can get to that level, that separates you immediately. And basically the difference in mission and mediocrity is that people that have arrived at level three, which is mission, have a pretty clear set of goals that they're moving toward. And they also have a general sense of purpose, something overarching in their life that they feel like they're moving toward, that they stand for. Most of the time, people in this level have a set of values that they think are important in their lives. Maybe it's their faith, their family, those kinds of things, and they have conviction about that. So if you can reach level three, you're doing very well. But there is a fourth level, and that is that's kind of the pinnacle. That's the ultimate, and I refer to that as mastery. I got this term from Robert Greene's book Mastery, which I think is one of the best books about just expertise and how the greatest of all time, people like Da Vinci and Mozart, how they became, who they eventually did become. But the difference in mission and mastery is the idea of flow, or falling into the zone on command. And a lot of this is from an author named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote a book called Flow, and his name is almost impossible to spell, and it's very difficult to pronounce. but if you look up his work, it's basically the science of what he calls flow, and it's how can we build in routines in our lives that allow us to kind of drop into that state of flow where hours go by and we are doing really important work that is in line with our most cherished values and convictions. And that's kind of the secret sauce of reaching the top level of performance in anything in life, but certainly as it pertains to leadership and developing the long-term behaviors that we want to have as leaders.
It's good stuff on all M's. We can remember that. I like that you said mediocrity is where most people land because it's easy to get there, but it's
Yes.
actually not that fun to be there because you're missing out and you're fighting and scratching amongst everybody else. So this is why we talk about like learning from failure and giving our kids challenges and allowing them to, build resilience and all that good stuff. That's how you climb out of level 2 into level 3. And you have habits. I love talking about habits. You have 7 habits, goals, behaviors that people need to focus on to climb those steps to mastery. So like the super quick 30,000 foot overview of the 7. I'm going to cut
Yeah.
you off if you go too long. It's like super quick overview, and then we're just
Please cut me
down
off.
to 1.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just run through them.
Yeah.
So that so you have the 7. So number 1 is embrace radical responsibility. Number 2 is recognize and optimize your higher self. Number 3 is choose leadership and manage ego. Number 4 is strategically design your reality. Number 5 is commit to mastery, which we just talked about. Number 6 is relentlessly, relentlessly invest. Thank you, in your in the big 3. And so the big 3 I break down into 3 individual, parts, which is your tribe, your own education, and value producing assets. And then the final one, which really ties all of them together and kind of is involved in each of the other 6, is be still and know, which is kind of that, that connection to a higher power, which, I'm a Christian, so I consider that to be God.
All right. Well, that was definitely the 30,000-foot overview. So you got to buy
Good.
the book to understand all of that. We're going to dial in on
That's
behavior
right.
3, but first, I feel like before you can build something, you got to clear the land, right? You got to clear the foundation. So what's something parents need to delete from their children's lives if they hope to raise leaders?
So that's great. I mean, there are tons of different tangible things we could talk about, but I do, you honed in on something when we were discussing earlier, and going back and forth a bit, and it's the idea of entitlement and a fixed mindset. And I think, in a lot of ways, it's just the posture with which us and our kids approach the world. And I think, the opposite of entitlement to me is stewardship. And so, if we can teach our kids to view life as stewards of the gifts and the opportunities they've been given, rather than allowing them to expect for life to give them things, I think that's a really good first step. And the other thing I would say is, and I'd refer everybody, if they haven't heard of it or read of it, the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is about this idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And it's a pretty simple idea, but I think it's a life-changing one too. And it's just the idea that there is a certain group of people that has the mindset, which is called fixed, that the talents and the genetic predisposition they have is limiting, and they can never get better than they are in their current state. That contrasts with a growth mindset, which is the belief that we have a constant ability to improve and get better in each area of our lives. And science over and over again has shown that a growth mindset is beneficial, but it's also more accurate. Our brains have the ability to improve. We have all kinds of scientific evidence that new neural pathways can be developed if we just approach them in the right ways. And so I think that approach to life, that growth mindset, and that stewardship mentality are 2 things that we can help our kids with very early, and it will benefit them a long time in the future.
I don't even know if you knew this, Trevor, but my original site is kitchen stewardship. That's actually the
I did not know that. I did not.
You used that word a few times. I'm like, yeah, I thought you were my people. But no, that's so good. I love the opposite of entitlement is stewardship, just that mindset shift. And then absolutely the growth mindset. We teach parents when we talk about picky eating to say, oh, that's okay if you're not eating Brussels sprouts yet. Just that word yet. I mean, if 60 is the new young, and we're still building neural pathways at 60, we cannot give up on our 10s, our 12s, our 15-year-olds, right? There's a lot.
No, and with Elon Musk, doing the work he's doing, I think we've got a good chance to live a long, long time in this generation.
That's a good point. There's a whole lot of yet to be had.
There really is.
So we talked a little bit about how this shepherd leadership is sort of the opposite of ego leadership.
Mm.
And your behavior number 3, behaviors that we want to teach our kids to be able to climb to step 3 or step 4, maybe even mastery, is called choose leadership and manage ego.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. This is a lost art in our culture. I'd love to see it invigorated. So help us out here. Like, how can parents set up household expectations, set up practical opportunities for kids to practice this style of leadership, like a style of leadership that will serve society, not just themselves?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, great insight. One thing I always like to point out is a blog post that was done in 2009 that many people probably have heard of. I can't remember the name of the blog post right now, but the author's name was Bronnie Ware, Ware. And she was a palliative care nurse that was working with adults that were about to pass away, basically a hospice nurse. And she was spending the last 2 to 3 weeks of their lives with them, keeping them comfortable. And she developed really strong relationships with many of these patients. And she asked them, and basically put together the answers over the course of a number of years. What were they? Did they have any regrets about the way they lived their lives? And if they did, what were those things they would have done differently? And far and away, there was one answer that came up more than anything else. And the answer was always, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was to the effect of, I wish I would have cared less about what other people wanted me to do in life. And I wish I would have taken more time to pursue the things that I thought were important and valuable. And I think that in many ways is the idea of choosing leadership. It's the idea that we and our kids need to get clear on what things in life are valuable to them, and what things in life do they want to stand for, because that really, when it comes down to it, is what makes life meaningful. And those are the things that you don't regret later, that you did. And I think we should spend much less time, I'm talking to myself here as well, of course, thinking about what other people want us to do, and how they are going to perceive, the things that we're doing on a daily basis, because most of the time other people aren't thinking about us anyway. And even though we know that intuitively, it's hard to accept it. And so that, I think, is step one. And the manage ego part, I chose the wording on that, with intention, because ego is essential. I mean, in many ways, we need ego to give us, the drive to move forward in life, and we need that, that sense of ambition. But we've got to manage it, and we've got to use it with intentionality, and not abuse it. And so, there's a lot of literature out there that talks about, particularly in the business world, CEOs that are humble as opposed to arrogant in terms of their behavior. They have a lot less turnover. They have long-term employees that stay. They have, much stronger relationships with the people on their team. And just generally speaking, they're much more successful. And so I think if we can just share those ideas with our kids, and show them that, humility is strength, it's not weakness. And to choose to be humble, without being, a pushover, is really a character strength that is worth pursuing.
There's so many like razor edge lines
Mm-hmm.
in what you just said, right? I mean, the ability to think about like humility being a strength, but then also like sticking to your own guns.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a fine line.
It is.
And it's so interesting to think about, like, we think ego is all about ourselves, but really ego really is about what other people view us as and what
Mm-hmm.
they will give us. And so if the opposite of ego is then to not care what others think about you, but to care about others, like, oh, there's
That's a
just
really
so
important point right there, is to be able to care about others individually, but not so much about, their perceptions of us, because they need to know that we care about them and their well-being, it doesn't matter so much to them if we're cool or not, because that part will come naturally. If they know that we really have their best interest at heart.
The best conversationalists are people who ask questions
Mm-hmm.
about you and your life, not someone who can stand and create wonderful sentences. And they're such good speakers. Like, people don't want to hang out with good speakers.
No, that wears off.
Stage, but
yeah, that wears off. That charisma wears off quickly. And I think that, you're exactly right. The most pleasant conversation is when you can sit down with somebody and know that they're listening to you and actually caring about what you have to say. Like this conversation. And so I think that that in and of itself, being a good listener and really caring about the ideas others are sharing, that idea of compassion and authenticity is the very essence of, the Shepherd leadership philosophy.
Yeah, Harvard Business Review lists empathy as the most hireable trait. But I think there is a lot of redefining that needs to happen, as you say, because when we look at a lot of leaders or CEOs or presidents or, people in power, they do seem to be more of like what we call in our family, the puffed out chest man.
That's right.
Just like,
that's right.
They're all talking and they're all about themselves. And so we tend to think, I have tended to think as a parent, like, my kids need to be outgoing. They need to be speakers. They need to be strong leaders. But can shy, like introverted kids still be shepherd leaders?
100%. Yeah. I think, all of our kids have their own unique personalities. But if you study leadership, which, probably many people listening to this have on some level, all leaders come in all different shapes and sizes, and very successful leaders come in all different shapes and sizes and personality types. I think that whether you're introverted or extroverted has less importance than the example you're able to cast for those people that are following you. And if you're able to show them, whether it's one-on-one in quiet conversation, or whether you're extroverted and it's one to many, they still have to feel cared for by you, and it needs to be authentic, and I think without that, people can sense that puffed out chest person. It doesn't ring true. And it's not effective. People aren't going to be drawn to put their trust, and they're not going to give their best for someone that is not looking for their best interest in each of the interactions they have. And people are very intuitive, and they can sense those things.
Yeah. So there's loud leaders and there's effective leaders, really.
Absolutely.
And, we've talked about a lot of sort of heady academic philosophy, which I love. I'm going to distill that down a little bit, and then we got to talk practical for our poor busy parents out there. So when we're talking building shepherd leaders, we're talking about reaching the top 1% of your own potential. We're talking about having a real purpose. We want to infuse a purpose in our kids' lives. We want to infuse a growth mindset that they can always change and grow, and that they need to be stewards and not entitled. We want to talk about how they can care for others instead of caring so much about themselves, and that is the way. Listening and all those things are the way that you become a good leader. And then that idea of humility, right? Being a strength, not a weakness. So many good things. We can start to like infuse that in our language, but we need some action steps. I'm all about the practical. I love that your book is full of like both small and large like exercises meant to build shepherd leadership. So can you give parents just one example of something they can incorporate into like a family routine practically to help raise leaders?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One, individually, and this is something they could recommend to their kids too, is to set up what I refer to in the book as visual triggers, and that is, leadership is about who you are as a person, who you're trying to be, moment to moment. And I think it's very easy to get off track during the day when things are very busy and stress is high from the person that we're striving to be. For me, one of those things is my level of patience, that I'm showing. Often, particularly with my kids, when it's late at night and everybody's tired and we're trying to get everything settled, right? I know that no other parents have this challenge.
I say I turn into a pumpkin at 8:00. It's like bedtime, right. And if we're running late, there's something like a trigger switches and I turn mean.
It does. It just and that is a very real thing, that happens. So one way so whatever the particular challenge is for you, for me, it's patience. It tends to be the challenge I have. And you can set up a number of different things. You can set up visual triggers like Post-it notes, for example. At work, you can do it around the office, at your desk or on your keyboard. Just a short note that says, hey, take a deep breath and be patient, something along those lines, whatever the individual thing is for you that you struggle with. The other thing that's effective is to set a couple of different alarms on your phone during the day that go off, and they just say what the particular behavior is that you want to be focusing on that day. So if you're really working on patience like me, you can just set an alarm that says, hey, take a deep breath and be more patient right now, 2 or 3 times during your day. Or if it's at bedtime, right before the typical bedtime routine starts. And for me, if I'm able to do something like that just kind of like puts the brakes on, and kind of brings me back to reality quickly, I think it's really helpful. It's not magic, but it is just the ability to be in the present moment all of a sudden and realize, oh man, yeah, like the wheels are coming off here a little bit. Let me regroup and focus on being the parent I'm really trying to be here. I think that kind of thing can be super effective, regardless of the struggle that you have. And kids can do the same thing. Your kids may not have a phone yet, but they probably have some kind of a calendar or something that they use at school that they could write in the front of, or you could get them some Post-it notes, whatever's easy for you. Right. But most of them have a tablet. My kids all have tablets. So they could do something like that and use the same technique.
Yeah. And do you recommend switching it up? Because I know I kind of get like ad blindness when I do stuff like that after a month or two. So you almost need to set like a monthly reminder, like change your visual trigger.
Right.
It's all faded. Because you just
that's a great point. Yeah. Technology does that, where you kind of everything blends into the background if you've seen it too many times. So that's a great idea. I think the other thing you can do is switch up the time frame a little bit. Switch up the times that the alarm goes off, or switch the mantra you use. There's a couple of different exercises in the book about mantras, and there's lots of different success minds out there that advocate using mantras to kind of get you back on track. But just like a short phrase that means something to you individually, kind of snaps your mind back.
To yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like creating an advertising jingle.
Yes, your own particular personal one. And so for me, it's just stay focused, or take a deep breath, little stuff like that for you is personal. And switching those up, I think, can be effective as well.
That's cool. I'm going to see if my kids want to do that, because we have like the Google Home.
Yeah.
And my husband has implemented technology to remind kids like when it's snack time. Because in the summer, they always are asking for snacks.
Can I have a snack? Can I have a snack? Yeah.
Yeah. At 10 and 3:30, he has like funny ways for Google to say, he's like, it's snack time all up in the Kimball house. And so then they don't ask until they hear that. It's brilliant. But they could like set their own.
That's a good dad. That's a smart idea. I like that.
He was really tired of the requests. Desperate times.
Innovative.
So speaking of food,
yeah.
Right? Kids Cook Real Food, we're all about building responsibility and confidence, but especially in the kitchen. Do you have any ideas for parents to insert leadership behaviors as they're working with their kids in the kitchen or at the family dinner table?
I thought about this, and besides the obvious of having the kids make a habit of being the one that sets the table, I think that's one that we kind of started a couple of years ago with our oldest, and that's been pretty effective. But the other one I think that could be cool is for each of the kids to have one particular meal that's like their thing. maybe something that they like my oldest daughter, spaghetti is her favorite, far and away her favorite meal. And it's not overly complicated, to make spaghetti. So, even if they're not the one that actually prepares the entire meal, for that one meal to be kind of like theirs, and for them to sort of take the lead role in whether it's deciding, what member of the family is going to do what portion of the prep work, or who's going to set the table that particular night, just giving them a few extra responsibilities when it's spaghetti night, for example, or whatever the meal is for them, to just give them the autonomy and the feeling that they have a little bit of extra incentive to kind of be a leader in that particular instance. I think could be a kind of a cool way, especially for young kids, that really aren't used to having like the lead role when it's time to make dinner. So I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to experiment with kids on.
Yeah. Super cool. It's a great way to practice yeah, executive
Not
coaching,
overwhelming,
planning.
not overwhelming, but just enough excitement to where, and novelty to where it might be interesting for them.
Yeah, and even a snack or like a Saturday breakfast or Sunday breakfast, something that's not too stressful, especially if the kids are little. And now again, I'm super practical, so I always like to leave parents with like distilling it down to like, what's the one thing that you would recommend to accomplish right away and sort of see and feel a quick win today?
Yeah, so that's really good, and I think I'm gonna give one that is a little outside the box of what probably people may be expecting or maybe even be comfortable with. And the reason I'm giving this one is because it's been one that's been extremely helpful for me in my life as a dad, and as a guy that really didn't know how to be a dad at all, especially when I had my first child. I really hadn't been around kids that much, at that point in my life.
Yeah.
So, and that's an accountability group. The group that I have is just four other guys that have kids. Mine happen to be all Christian guys because I'm a Christian, and that's kind of the life path I'm trying to best proceed on.
Sure.
But for each person listening, I think they'll know their people, and the type of people that might work best for them. But just a group of people that you feel comfortable enough with to go to, when you've had 2 or 3 days in a row where you're not doing a good job, and you've kind of fallen off track with the type of example you want to be. It's really helpful to have, a group that, number one, like gets you as a person and knows your heart, and also is not afraid to say, hey, like, you're better than this. You can do a better job with this, but hey, I'm here to support you. I want the best for you. Anytime you need advice or just like a cheerleader, like I'm here. So that's not an easy thing necessarily to set up. The group that I have, we've been meeting for 5 years, and it started out as a group of 15 people in a Bible study, and dwindled down, over time to the 5 of us that kind of stuck with it. And so it's probably not an overnight thing, but it is, I think, a tangible thing that if people are willing to put their time in and do it, I think it's a lifelong reward, and worth pursuing.
Yeah, and the bottom line is just being incredibly intentional about your parenting. So like the one first step to an accountability group is just just text a couple friends like, hey, you guys want to have like a group text where we talk about parenting, you don't necessarily have to have a meeting every week or every month.
No, absolutely. Everybody can do what works best for them. And, we all have different seasons of life. When you have young kids and things are really intense, it'll probably look different than when your kids are moving into the teenage years, when you probably really do need to be meeting in person and talking about some of the challenges that you're dealing with your teenage kids. So very good point. Yeah, it could look different at different stages, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Trevor Blattner, author of Redefining the 1%, the top 1%. Super important information, very helpful. I want to see all of our Kids Cook Real Food members and community members raising shepherd leaders, right?
Amen.
Teaching their kids that humility is a strength, And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to ask my kids something they're working on and how they can include like a visual trigger, the post-it or the reminder of some sort, and just see what happens. Like it's
Hmm.
super interesting to watch how kids build habits really different ways than adults do.
Yeah, let them take the ball and run with it and see what they do. Um,
That's leadership,
there,
right?
it is, and they'll probably all do it differently.
Uh-huh. That's neat. I'll have to when we post this up, I'll have to include what happened in the post.
That's awesome. That'll be great.
Well, it was
But
great talking to you, Dr.
well,
Trevor.
thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, the book is launching this month, July 2021. So go grab a copy. Dr. Trevor has some great free gifts for you. We don't know what they're going to be yet, but they're going to be great. And thank you so much. We'll be sure to leave links to everything wherever we share this video.
Katie, thank you so much.
Awesome. Healthy Parenting Connector listeners. Again, I'm Katie Kimball for Kids Cook Real Food. I'll see you back next week with another expert, another great topic on being that intentional parent, on raising healthy, independent adults. Infuse in your family with connection, confidence, and creativity.